All right. This is going to be something we haven't gotten to do in quite a while, not because of a bias, as some would have it, but because of the administration's own actions. This is going to be a more or less positive story about the administration, I must say. So, we were actually on the air when this self proclaimed most important statement of any president ever of all time, or something to that effect, came out. For many years, the world has wondered why prescription drugs and pharmaceuticals in the United States of America were so much higher in price than they were in any other nation, sometimes being 5 to 10 times more expensive than the same drug manufactured in the exact same laboratory or plant by the same company. It was always difficult to explain and very embarrassing because, in fact, there was no correct or rightful answer. The pharmaceutical drug companies would say for years that it was research and development costs, and that all of these costs were and would be, for no reason whatsoever, borne by the suckers of America alone.
Hmm.
Campaign contributions can do wonders, but not with me. Donald, you want the 6 inch or you want the 15? And not with the Republican Party. We are going, yeah, we are going to do the right thing, something that the Democrats have fought for many years. Therefore, I am pleased to announce that tomorrow morning in the White House at 9 a.m., I will be signing one of the most consequential executive orders in our country's history. Prescription drug and pharmaceutical prices will be reduced almost immediately by 30 to 80%. They will rise throughout the world in order to equalize and, for the first time in many years, bring fairness to America. I will be instituting a most favored nations policy whereby the United States will pay the same price as the nation that pays the lowest price anywhere in the world. Our country will finally be treated fairly, and our citizens' healthcare costs will be reduced by numbers never even thought of before. Additionally, on top of everything else, the United States will save trillions of dollars. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make America great again. Now, we have said many times over the years that if the MAGA movement, so called, leaned into actually catering to the working class base that they stole from the Democrats over the years, they'd be unstoppable. I mean, and they might still be unstoppable, frankly. I think they've done a lot of things. I know they've done a lot of things that are deeply unpopular, even with their own voters. This is the kind of thing they should really be doing and focusing on. And even with the things that they've been doing that their voters don't like, this is a smart move if he can actually pull it off, because we've said it over and over again. People will put up with a lot of trampling of civil liberties if they see their costs go down, if they actually see good economic results from this administration. Now, we'll get into a little bit whether this is doable or not doable, but I would say, just to give a little bit of a pre take, hey, however that plays out in the courts, he's putting a certain amount of pressure on the pharmaceutical companies that what's so damaging for the Democrats uh, about this, it obviously begs the question, well, why didn't Biden do it? Why didn't Obama do it? Like, if you could, even if it's just a pressure tactic, why didn't they do that? Right? The entire time they've been presenting themselves as if they're trying to fight the pharmaceutical companies. And, we've always known that they would go this far and no further because they were owned by them. But
Right.
this really exposes how limited their efforts really were by comparison to what they might have done in theory, even if it's only tactical to force a conversation.
Right. Well, even if it fails, I mean, even if it fails,
Right.
it's a good political stunt because it pits you against the courts. The courts
Of
are
course.
representing in the public mind at that point the interests of Big
Big Pharma.
Pharma,
Right.
whereas you are trying to take them down. Now, even if you know it's going to fail politically, it still makes sense,
Right.
and it
There's no
still makes the
downside.
Democrats look like they were never trying in the first place, which, they
It,
weren't.
they weren't. Right. And that's what this really it exposes to very damaging effect. So here's RFK fresh out of the poop river. Hopefully he changed his shorts before the press conference. But this is what he had to say. And hey, man, when he's right, he's right. He threw it right back at the Democrats.
But he can't be bought, unlike most of the politicians in this country. And he is standing here for the American people.
Well, that part's
I
not
don't
true.
know what, there's writers like Lord Elizabeth Warren or Robert Reich who are saying that President Trump is on this side of the oligarchs. There has never been a president more willing to stand up to the oligarchs than President Donald Trump. And I'm very, very proud of you, Mr. President, for your courage, I'll say, because I don't want to be crude, your intestinal fortitude, your stiff spine.
Speaking of intestinal fortitude, people are saying I shouldn't have swum in that shit river. I'm starting to feel a little pinch in the behind.
People of intestinal
Get out
fortitude.
of here.
I always thought Giardia was fake, but not so much now.
And your willingness to stand up for the American people. We have 4.2% of the world's population. Our country represents 75% of the revenues for pharmaceutical companies. We spend in our country 11.
Okay, so yeah, hey man, at the end of the day, sure, it makes the Democrats look terrible because they always, whenever they've gotten confronted on why they don't do more, they blame the Republicans, they blame the process, they blame the courts, they blame the rules, they blame the strictures of regulation. And look what he did. And he's been doing things like this over and over again, where even if you're going to have to wrangle with the courts, you're getting a lot more done than the Democrats ever did in a lot of areas where they've said they are the champions by contrast to the GOP. Now, Trump stands up to oligarchs. I mean, yeah, sometimes he will. Often he won't. In terms of his general policy, he doesn't. But hey, we don't have to ask, would a Democrat do this? They haven't. They haven't. Obama was playing with a much better hand than Trump is playing in terms of his mandate, in terms of the balance of Congress. He didn't do any shit like this. What's their
Yeah, no, of
excuse?
course, obviously.
Uh,
Go ahead.
all right, so this is the part of the press conference that grabbed all the headlines. Trump explains why he decided to make this such a priority, and is so often the case with Trump. It's because somebody said a thing to him.
I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine who's a businessman, very, very, very top guy. Most of you would have heard of him. A highly neurotic, brilliant businessman, seriously overweight, and he takes the fat shot drug. And he called me up.
And he went blind.
And he said,
can't see anymore.
President, he calls me, he used to call me Donald, now he calls me President, so that's nice respect. But he's a rough guy, smart guy. Very successful, very rich. I wouldn't even know how we would know this, but because he's got comments. Said, President, could I ask you a question? What? I'm in London, and I just paid for this damn fat drug I take. I said, it's not working. He said, I just paid $88.
No, not
And
working.
in New York, I paid
just ate a quart of ice cream. I'm still
$1,300.
hungry.
What the hell is going on?
All
Who
right.
is he talking about? He says it's a guy you would all know. Who's a fat business guy?
Maybe it's Lutnick.
Who likes? Yeah, right. Lutnick. Yeah.
Lutnick's pretty fat.
No, Lutnick seems like Lutnick's not fat.
Come on, he's a little sausage, that guy.
No, I wouldn't say that. I don't think so. It's got to be someone else. No, I don't know. It's
Maybe
interesting.
Pritzker. Maybe he's talking to Pritzker.
Pritzker, yeah.
Okay, so he goes on to say now I've seen Trump lie in real time when I went to the Braga rally. It gave me a sense of how he sounds when he's doing it. I think he's probably making this up, but nonetheless, no real political downside to this story.
With the drug companies, represented by somebody who's very, very smart, good person too. And we argued about it for about half hour, and then finally he just said, because they can't justify it, he just said, look, you got me. You got me. I can no longer they've been justifying this crap for years. They said, oh, it's research and development. Well, I said, well, research and development, other countries should pay research and development too. It's for their benefit.
I very much doubt that story's true, but hey, the point is still well taken. So here's his more extended remarks as he signed the executive order.
You see a tremendous cut, I don't think, I mean, I know you're going to see it in Medicaid and Medicare. That cut will be massive because drugs are 50, 60% of the cost. So Medicaid costs are going down and Medicare costs are going down because of what we're doing today. And there's no, it's not like, oh, gee, well, maybe it won't happen. It's going to happen because the other countries have no choice. Now, the drug companies are going to have to say, listen, if you don't pay more, we're not going to give you the drug, and they're willing to do that. So that's it. They have to, we have to equalize.
How do you respond to the fact that price controls?
Say it?
How do you respond to the fact that this...
It's not price control, no. What was price control is before. If you want to talk about it. Price control is what they were doing. They were making us pay. They set a price, and they said, here's what we're going to pay, and anything else charge America. Because at that time they had a very stupid president, and it really went crazy during the last 4 years. And remember this, the Democrats are the ones that allowed this to happen. They were the ones that were the protector of this pricing system. And I think it's going to be very hard. You'll have to ask Democrats, are they going to vote against the one great, big, beautiful deal that's being negotiated now, tax cuts, etc., when now on top of the tax cuts and regulation cuts, all the things, now you're going to say that the price of your medicine is going down by 60, 70, 80%. You're going to vote against it? I think a lot of Democrats are going to be forced to do something that their leaders are going to beg them not to do, and that's vote for the bill. I don't see how they can vote against it. How can they vote against it when drug prices, drugs and pharmaceuticals are going to be down 70, 80%? It's going to be very interesting.
Mr. President, what?
So he's laying out the political calculus right there. And I would say in regards to the bill, he's talking about the budget bill. That really depends on what else is in it. Like if there are massive Medicaid cuts, I think it would be very easy for them to vote against it, whatever they do with pharmaceuticals. I will say this in terms of why Trump would be willing to do this, because he's not wrong that the Democrats won't, in spite of the fact that obviously in opposition to the GOP, they've been the ones to bring up this issue. Whereas the GOP have defended the pharma companies. But in the end, the Democrats have just defended them while damning them, right? I think part of that, when you see these moments where Trump pisses off the oligarchs, you got to remember, I think it's partly what Thomas Frank says, that Obama and all the people around Obama, these guys are all from the Ivy League. They all come from the same places. They belong to the same fraternities. So the guy working over at Goldman Sachs and the guy working over at Pfizer, these are all the people who went to the same schools that you went to. And, the way Thomas Frank put it in one interview that he did is, and that's your friend from MIT. He didn't mean to crash the economy. He's a good guy. He didn't mean to do it. I think there's a personal class identification that most of the kinds of people that today dominate the Democratic Party have with the same people who are lobbying them on behalf of these pharmaceutical companies that Trump does not have. And that sounds strange. Well, he's rich. Yeah, man. I mean, but his branch of rich is not integrated into that Rockefeller Northeastern elite kind of rich. It just isn't. I think for a lot of the kind of wealthy, upper class, well educated set, that surrounded Obama. A guy like Trump, he's a gauche. He's
Right.
gauche. He's a gauche real estate guy. He's a schmata guy. He's a
Right, of
schmata
course,
guy who
yeah.
got rich to them. And that makes him much more willing to piss them off because he doesn't see them as his people, even though economically they may be.
Yeah, and I also think, in terms of like the lobbying side of pharma, part of why they pay both Democrats and Republicans is because of the obvious reason, which is that one is an insurance policy against the other. So no matter who's in power, you got someone in there who is responsive to you. The other part of this, of course, is, if you bribe both sides, not in necessarily equal measure, but pretty close in terms of pharma contributions, it's pretty close between the Democrat and the GOP in terms of, who on a whole gets the most pharma money. As long as that balance is relatively close, then you have a lot of leverage over each of these sides when they're in power. Hey, you tip the scale too far against me. I'm already paying them across the street. I'll just take more money across the street, and now you're going to be at a major deficit. But when we did the piece on Sunday about the cost of giving birth in America versus all these other countries, you kind of saw a small sort of snapshot of the dynamic that Trump is talking about there. And it is true that part of the reason why other countries pay so little is because we are, as he mentioned in that truth post, we are the suckers who they get to just fleece. Now, they get to fleece us because we have a privatized healthcare system and the government is very, very limited into how it can negotiate with the pharmaceutical companies and the medical device companies, which I guess that's not covered in this order here. So yeah, it of course is extremely lopsided, and we of course subsidize the cheap and or free healthcare that people get around the world. I mean, there's no question about that. There is a big question as to how pharma will react if this actually goes through. Do they charge the other countries more? Can they get away with that? What will happen in that respect? My guess is this is not going to go through, but it is still a political win for him, even if it doesn't go through.
All right, so this is a little detail about those factors. So this is from Reuters. U.S. President Donald Trump signed a wide-reaching executive order on Monday directing drug makers to lower the prices of their medicines to align with what other countries pay that analysts and legal experts said would be difficult to implement. The order gives drug makers price targets in the next 30 days and will take further action to lower prices if those companies do not make, quote, significant progress toward those goals. The order was not as bad as feared. Investors, analysts, and drug pricing experts said, and they questioned how it would be implemented. Shares of drug makers, which had been down on the threat of most favored nation pricing, recovered and rose on Monday. So that is revealing. The investor class is not taking it seriously. Trump told a press conference that the government would impose tariffs if the prices in the U.S. did not match those in other countries, and said he was seeking cuts of between 59 and 90%. Everybody should equalize. Everybody should pay the same price, Trump said. The United States pays the highest prices for prescription drugs, often nearly 3 times more than other developed nations. Trump tried in his first term to bring the U.S. in line with other countries, but was blocked by the courts. If drug makers do not meet the government's expectations, it will use rulemaking to bring drug prices to international levels and consider a range of other measures, including importing medicines from other developed nations and implementing export restrictions, a copy of the order showed. Trump's order directs the government to consider facilitating direct-to-consumer purchasing programs that would sell drugs at the prices other countries pay. Trade groups representing biotech and pharmaceutical companies decried the move. Now, that's one indication that he's on the right track. Quote, importing foreign prices from socialist countries would be a bad deal for American patients and workers. It would mean less treatments and cures and would jeopardize the hundreds of billions our member companies are planning to invest in America, Stephen Ubel, CEO of Industry Trade Group Pharma, said in a statement. Now, you do know they're running scared because if you look at the way they crafted that sentence, they crafted it specifically to be as MAGA as possible. You know, you got the socialist countries,
Right.
and you got we're going to invest in America. You know, they really went out of their way. So, speaking of the Democrats, there is no good response to this. You're busted. You're busted. You're busted. But they're going to try. So here's Jasmine Crockett said, "This man told you all he had the concepts of a plan. And it turns out the plan was to ask Big Pharma nicely and hope for the best. Folks are rationing insulin, and he's out here signing executive suggestions. Be serious." Yeah, that's not going to fly, Jasmine. Try again. Go ahead, bring it back into the workshop there. And Chris Jackson, she's right. Trump's executive order does nothing but ask Big Pharma to negotiate, something they can just refuse. Joe Biden actually passed a law. Medicare can now negotiate drug prices. Insulin is capped and seniors are saving money. Trump talked. Biden delivered. Biden delivered very little. He delivered some minimal savings. The insulin thing was good, but he delivered minimum savings on a very limited number of drugs. What, 12 drugs that was limited to? So asking the peasants to be happy with the crumbs in the face of this is not a good look. It's not good politics. Now, if Trump, as he is wont to do, just kind of forgets about it because clearly it's not this simple, he's going to have to actually take the kinds of actions described here. Well, okay, if we can't do it this way, well, then we'll find another way. We'll directly import from foreign companies. We'll from foreign countries. We'll impose tariffs. Well, is he going to do that? Is he going to pay that kind of attention? Is he going to listen to the last person he spoke to? Or are they going to bring in a bunch of people that he is personally well disposed to lobby him? We'll see. And then that's the time to maybe mount this kind of an attack. But even on the MAGA side, not like those guys have clean hands in all this. Top GOP senator, this is John Thune. Drug pricing action unlikely before end of year. And they're getting attacked by MAGA. Senate Majority Leader Thune is making excuses as to why the Senate cannot codify President Trump's executive order to lower prescription drug prices and claims this could be controversial. Since 1997, Senator Thune has received over $1.2 million in donations from Big Pharma. And here from another account, Majority Leader Thune and Speaker Johnson push back on Trump's executive order to lower prescription drug prices. Thune, over $1.9 million from Big Pharma. Johnson, $300K since 2018. Should leaders who take pharma money be allowed to block drug price reforms? You know, they sound like lefties.
Yeah, right.
They sound like lefties, and this is what we've said all along. If Trump really oriented this toward working class concerns, yeah, man. I mean, do you see these people screaming about socialism? That's socialism.
Right,
Do you see them screaming about socialism? The problem is they're so malleable. They're so caught up in the cult of the great leader that when Trump says, yeah, no, these white South Africans, that's different. They go, yeah, that's different, right? Like it, but this really shows you, yeah, man. Like if he really did address these kinds of concerns, the Republicans would be unbeatable for a generation. And because the Democrats' response is that, what we just read from Jasmine Crockett, they might still be unbeatable. You know, I mean, I would not assume that Trump is in as much trouble in the midterms as advertised.
I would. I think they're at this rate, they're going to take a bath in the midterms. I mean, they can turn it around, but I think
but the Democrats are so awful. They've lost nothing. They've learned nothing. Rather, they're about to oust David Hogg.
Yeah, I still think.
David
I think that's
Hogg is
why they're
too
going to oust
radical
David
for
Hogg.
them.
Yeah, no, but I think that's why they're going to oust David Hogg. I think they're doing that because they feel like all they have to do is nothing and trust that the Republicans will implode. Which, at this rate, I think they will. Like I said, anything can change. I mean, I'm not registering a prediction. We're talking about 18 months from now, so like anything can happen. But yeah, no, look, obviously, I mean, they don't have an answer to this. They never had an answer to this. They didn't want to talk about health care at all post ACA. It's very obvious that the Democrats were not interested in
Problem solved.
litigating this any further once Obamacare passed. I mean, for all the bullshit about how no, we're going to have a public option, we knew that was nonsense. It wasn't even worth debating that. I mean, it was so obvious during the 2016 campaign that Obamacare was it. And then what did they say? She said, we're going to strengthen Obamacare. Strengthen, that means nothing. You know, Biden talks about a public option, never even came up during his 4 years. Wasn't that he made some superficial attempt and no, it never even came up. So yeah, no, they are just a dead end status quo party, which is why this makes good political sense. I don't think it's going to happen. I still think Pharma throws around enough money to both parties where it's not going to happen, and I think it's questionable whether it would hold up in court. But
well, that's
we'll
what stopped him last time. He
Yeah.
he didn't go this far, but he tried to kind of buy fiat, bring down drug prices last time, and he was stopped in the courts. So.
Right, and this is an instance where the courts can actually stop it. This is not we're putting a guy on a plane and flying him out of the country, and what are they going to do? Right, this isn't about physically moving things from around, and if you don't have the infrastructure to actually go and get Kilmar Garcia back, they can just tell you to go fuck yourself. No, like if the courts strike this down, that will pretty much be the end of it, and I think that will happen if I had to guess. But it does expose the Democrats for being just completely useless on this issue, which had been a big issue for them. And if you can create enough conversations like this, you may have a chance in the midterms, right? Because the Democrats are so bad. But you have to get these into the conversation. And again, I go back to when you're shipping people off to torture prisons with no due process, and 88% of the country says you can't do that and you do it anyway, it's pretty hard to make the conversation about something else, especially if you can't get it through, right? Especially if you can't do it, right? It's one thing if you could do it. Like if you could actually put wins on the board that are truly populist and truly progressive economic policies, maybe. But people are going to have to see results before they take your word for it in terms of how the midterms go.
Yeah, well, what the Trump administration has demonstrated is how much a determined executive can do extra constitutionally and extra legally if they want without real consequences and moving 5 steps ahead while the courts are still on square one. If they really want to fuck with the pharmaceutical companies, they can. And if you look at all the possible avenues they laid out, if they approach this the way they've approached illegally deporting people to torture prisons, where it's as soon as a court shuts this avenue down, they're going this way and doing that. If they did that, yeah, man. I mean, at the very least, you would cause so many problems for them that they would be forced to bring down drug prices. They would be forced to seriously negotiate with the administration. The big question is, does Trump have the attention span? Does he have the interest? And given that if they did have that kind of follow through, there will be increasing pressure from people who give a lot of money to the Republican Party for him to stop, would he actually continue?
Please clap.